Hello and welcome. I'm Psychic Medium Roberto, and I truly hope you're doing well today. I'm going to leave my text with a pink glow as a reminder about Summer Wells, and I've just completed that three-part series where she had been pinging on me for a couple of weeks, or at least a month. So, trigger warning: I will be dealing with true crime events. And this may be triggering to some viewers. And then a disclaimer: these are my own opinions and need to be tested in a court of law, so all opinions are alleged. All right, so I'm going to do a profile by numbers on the Jody Sue case. And her case happened to ping on me during the week, so let's have a look. So I started having a look at the case. And so we'll note where the 0 is on the right-hand side, the 27th of June, 1995. So let's look at the day individually first before we get into the nitty-gritty. And that is on the top right there, I've got it separately with that 27.9 in the red. That's not a good number. The 33.6. Surprising in a way, that 33.6, and we'll get to it in a minute. But you'll also notice that there are a number of 6 in place here. There's 3 6s. The June, the combination of the month and the day, as well as the year, was a 6 year. And unfortunately, that's not a good sign. Because we're dealing with a negative aspect, and we know there must have been some kind of rough play outside her vehicle where they had found some of her items. So clearly there had been a struggle of some type. And then we have that 12.3, which is also not a good thing, particularly when you're dealing with femicide, because that 3 is all about abuse and control. And it also speaks about out of control. And of course, when you have a negative situation like this, it's out of control, but it's also about control. And not pleasant numbers, I must admit, on this day. We'll note Jody's date of birth on the left-hand side, just below her picture there. And she actually has quite extraordinary numbers, actually. The 6, the 5. She has a power number 33.6 in the year that she's born. So she's a live wire. She's a spark. She's like Summer Wells, full of energy, creating stories, creating trends, creating a following. When someone has a 33.6, that's a serious power number. And we'll note in her date of birth that she also has 3 6s. And we see actually on that day that there are a significant amount of numbers that are pinging directly on Jody, unfortunately. So this is why I believe that the 27.9, for me, in a lot of cases, when you see that 27.9, it's like a hit. It's planned. There's movement. There's thought. So in my mind, this was premeditated. There was definitely some kind of plan in place. Now, because the crime happened so early in the morning, so we'll see that line 00 to the 06. Now, I believe those are the 3 lines there, or the 3 numbers rather, that come into play. However, we must also keep in mind that we need to look at what was happening the day before, that -1. Now, by all accounts and by his own admission, John had said Jody had been over at his place the night before. They were watching a video, and of course she went home, right? I hear you saying, could the crime scene, so-called crime scene outside the vehicle be staged? To be honest, I don't believe so. Hey? I don't believe the crime scene was staged. But what is very clear and very strong, that it was premeditated. So there was a plan in place before I believe she was kidnapped, of course, but hear me out. And that 7 denotes the kidnapping as well, and the 12-3. So let's just say the day before, we have that 14-5 and 11-2. Now, if we look in the context of a relationship, right? So we have, and of course, we all know and agree. If you don't know, John was significantly older than Jody by 20 years, I believe, right? And there's no issue in age gaps at all, obviously, right? However, I think the age gap will come into play in this case. Okay? I'll say both again. There's no issues dating with a significant age gap. There's no issues with that. But I think in the case of an older, insecure male, or a dirty old male in this case, and we'll get to that 15-6 in a minute. But I do believe in this case, the age gap was too significant for Jody. And I would say that John, in my opinion, and based on what I'm seeing, the 15-6 as well, the 15-6 I'm seeing there at 6 o'clock, 1800 on the 27th. And the other significant number the day before in the same position, but the day before, is that 14-5. Both those numbers in the case of a relationship or female-related relationship where there's issues is that 14-5. So there was clearly problems between these guys. That 14-5 is sitting in the day. I would say there's a bit of an awkwardness. But I'm also picking up, there's a little bit of aggression going on here, or there's some kind of vocalized arguments, or there's some heated words going on. And that to me comes with 26-8. Now 8 is about communication. You got 2-6, you got people in a relationship, and relationships is also number 6. You've got then the 24-6. I think, or this just dawned upon me now rather, I believe he was making a move to solidify the relationship. And that is, for me, denoted by the 24-6. That's a build up to 6, 2, 4, 6. You can take it literally. That a decision was pending. 11-2 is about decision making, right? This way or that way. However, the outcome there, 11-2, I would say, for example, let's say Jody didn't want to offend him or hurt his feelings. She would have, in some way, shape, or form, intimated that she wasn't interested, or in some relation to that. Okay? The perpetrator on the scene, now I'm just going to step away from John. The perpetrator on the scene, in my opinion, was an older male, the 15-6. Now, because the crime happened so early in the morning, I believe between 3 and 3:30 a.m., round about there, the life of a news anchor, right, or news journalist. So she may have intimated, or at least through body language or a non-response, or I'm going to think about it. He could have even proposed marriage. I'm getting a sense there could have even been a proposition of marriage. I believe he proposed to her, that 24-6. But he was doing it for the wrong reasons. And the reason why I say that it's a 14-5 in the day. Now, if you watch my Murder Family Legacy show, or there's a couple of shows, but I mentioned that 14-5 is the bullshitter, the liar. And I believe, I don't believe, obviously, look, an age gap doesn't necessarily determine whether a relationship will be one way or the other. It can be a perfectly symbiotic relationship, owing to the fact that the one is older than the other. But I think in this case, there was benefit for John having a younger woman with him. And in particular, based on the couple of videos that I've seen, Jody was very popular. Obviously being in front of the news and being a news anchor and a news journalist on the ground, she would have a following. So she would have some kind of popularity, celebrity around her name. But that 14.5 alerts me that there's definitely lying going on here. It's not the whole truths. And that 11.2 as well is also breaking the law. You know, that 11.2 is also about breaking the law. And if we continue on into the next, so from midnight to 6 a.m. on that, the 27.9, that's a terrible number. I mean, let's put it this way. Let's put it this way. It's a terrible number in the context of a crime. Because 27.9 in the positive is about creation. It's about creating something that is powerful, or a new idea, or an invention. However, in a negative concept, it's almost like the hitman, the snipers on the scene, if you like. But definitely older male, 15.6. Now, we've got that 33.6, beg your pardon, just below the 27.9, 33.6. And I mentioned in a previous video about these alternative numbers like a reflection. Now, you know, with a power number, we normally would have to reveal a power number because a power number supersedes, let's say, a regular standard number, right? However, we do have that 15.6 in reflection. So again, we have the opportunity that, and that 33.6 lies as well with Jody, by the way, right? Remember the year she's born in. So in her world, she was going to work doing her thing. And of course, there would be foreknowledge by, it's definitely someone that knows her. It would be too random that someone's driving past exactly at 3:30 and they happen to see a woman trying to get into a car for whatever the situation is. In my opinion, this person knew what they were doing. It was premeditated. And I would say foreknowledge of her routine. You know, Jody could have easily said the night before, and I know I'm speculating, but she could have easily said before, I've got to go home as a way to get out of this awkward situation. I've got a call at 3:30 in the morning or whatever. I've got to be at the station at 4 in the morning. So already that information is passed, because by the time we get to that morning, the 27.9, approaching sunrise, a decision has been made to go out and get this person. And in this case, to get Jody. Unfortunately, I believe, and I know we don't want to hear about the negative things, but you know, I am the eternal optimist, I can assure you. But you know, the sequence of numbers that I'm seeing is not favorable by any means, unfortunately. But I do believe Jody was held for some time after the 27th. She was definitely held during the 27th and into the morning, at least into the morning of the 28th. But unfortunately, by the time we get to sunset on the 28th, that we start encountering numbers that are indicating a negative outcome, unfortunately. The 13.4. That 34.7, in the context of what you're talking about, is not a good thing. Similar numbers in the similar numbers to the Summer Wells case. I believe there was a suffocation going on here, and that suffocation was through strangulation. The 3, the 4, 34.7, to me is the cause of a death, strangulation. Physical, that 4, the 34.7, that 4 is the physical. The 3 is about control. And we see that the day before, that 12.3, the reason why the abduction and kidnapping happened is all about control. And when we see that 12.3, it's a familiar number when you're dealing with femicides and men who are spineless themselves in many ways are exacting control over a woman, also denoted by the number 3. So I believe the following day, the 28th. So this also seals it for me that Jody knew this person, regardless of whether it was John or not. I can tell you now, Jody knew this person, and I'll tell you why. Now, the following morning, on the 28th, we have the 28-10-1. That is two people arguing. There's a fight and argument going on, and I'm getting a sense that Jody was like pleading. But you have a maniacal, controlling man whose ego had been nuked the day before. And rage happens. We're in a month 6, we're in a year 6. That's rage, anger, violence. And of course, she wasn't going to change her mind. In fact, instead of pleading not to be in the relationship, she was probably pleading to have her life saved. And unfortunately, we see that 24/7. So I did pick up key words, and obviously I was maybe picking up the job that she was working on. Because I wrote their video recorded, for whatever reason I was picking up there was some kind of recording or Polaroids. I mean, that element might be, I mean, that I was getting spiritually, but it might be pinging more on the job that she was doing. But there's something about John that he has, at the time he would have had pornographic material. And maybe she stumbled on that as well. That John, it's quite funny. We always say dirty John, or the John, if they get a call girl, we call them Johns. Because it's funny, that John, that initial part of the name is 15-6. That is the dirty old man. And it was funny, when I was drawing out these numbers and I was listening to one of the news reports and I heard this guy's name, immediately pinged on him. And I couldn't, unfortunately, find his date of birth, but I then decided I'm going to look from her perspective. And that's kind of a conscious decision I've made about videos this year going forward, is that I don't want to spend too much time on the perp, because they don't deserve any mention other than the crime and punishment they receive. Of course I love watching documentaries and things like that, but at some point we should stop showing their faces and let's celebrate and talk about the people that were involved rather than the monsters themselves. And there's the argument, we can study them, yeah, absolutely. But let's reduce their popularity by somewhat, right? So with Jody, I believe we have a situation here that we have a male out of control. It's almost typical with an older male. Unfortunately, the disposal of Jody is not pleasant either, I must say. I don't believe. That on the 29th, we get a reflection of what was going on. There's that 11-2 again. The 13-4, the significance as well. With the outcome there on the 29th at 14-5, I would just say, and not to get too graphic and detailed, that we certainly made sure that the body would be easily disposable. And it's just unfortunate what a lovely woman this is, or was, And with that power number 33-6, she was the spark. And that 11-2 is her bringing stories together to the people. And that 17-8, that 8 is all about broadcast, communication, talking. And we're in the 8th year at the moment. And, with the age being 27-9, pings on the day as well. This was an intimate. It's interesting that all these numbers are pinging, because it's just been given to me. This was an intimate spousal dispute ending in the disappearance of Jody, because everything is just hitting on her completely. It's almost like she had no chance of escape at all out of this situation. Now, the question has also been, was this, like, for example, a disgruntled group or people or whoever she might have been investigating, because obviously we know that can happen as well. And although there's not really much of evidence of that other than the 10, but the 10 has originated through a different means. But I would definitely say this was definitely not like a, she did an expose and someone came after her. I don't believe it's that. This is too intimate for that. It feels very intimate. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. But, whether it was John or not, the one thing I'm guaranteed is 15-6 on the crime scene tells me dirty old male, older male, definitely older male. All right, let me know what your thoughts are. Please hit that subscribe button or hit that like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe and stay alert.